Now, a staggering 2/3 of Brits are calling for Harry and Meghan to be stripped of their HRH titles. A new poll by Find Out Now has revealed that most of the public is supporting the King in this family feud, ongoing family feud.
Prince Harry has done it again, and this time it's a BBC bombshell that's left royal insiders and the British public furious. From throwing his family under the bus to pushing dangerous narratives, Harry's latest move has reignited calls to strip him and Meghan of their royal titles permanently.
After Harry's bombshell BBC interview, it follows the Court of Appeal's decision to not overturn the ruling on his security in the UK.
I would love reconciliation with my family. I don't know how much longer my father has. He won't speak to me because of this security stuff. But it would be nice to reconcile. If they don't want that, that's entirely up to them.
In response to Prince Harry's allegations, Buckingham Palace have actually released a statement, which is very unusual, to be fair. All of these issues have been examined repeatedly and meticulously by the courts, with the same conclusion reached on each occasion. OK, well, I'm joined now by royal commentator Caroline Aston. Caroline, this interview, it may have happened, a day and a half ago now, but it's not going away, is it? I mean, Harry's digging an even bigger hole for himself here.
Well, I think he's dug so deep now, he'll strike water any day now. I mean, the problem here is, of course, well, let's just look at the words of Sir Geoffrey Voss, the Master of the Rolls, the second most senior judge in the country, when he summed up this whole issue and said he quite accepts that the Prince feels aggrieved, frustrated, that he's been badly treated, but at the end of the day, that's not the basis of sound legal argument. So he dismisses the appeal. That really says it all. So then we have this interview with the BBC, which incidentally was meant to last for 10 minutes, and he was allowed to speak for over 30. And of course, it put me very much in mind of the Oprah Winfrey interview, where all of the accusation, the prosecution case, was presented, but there was no defence, not once. And the BBC has apologised for this. Did they bear down on some of the points he made, like this establishment kind of controversy plot that he's putting forward? He paints a picture of shadowy influences aimed at bringing him down. But I'll just say this to you. If you work for a firm, you sign on and accept the terms of employment, then after a while decide that job's not for you, you want to do something different. Where else in the world would you expect to take with you the perks and privileges that were part of that previous job? And the answer is you don't. You chose to leave. You chose to try a different way of living, independent financial commitment, earning money to support your lifestyle. And of course, because the Queen quite rightly said you can't use your HRH, you can't use royal, and you can't be half in and half out, which is what they wanted. Well, ever since then, we've heard, haven't we, the jingle of the golden royalty rattle being thrown out of, well, the platinum playpen of privilege. That's how I would sum that up.
Let's break this all down. During a shocking new BBC appearance, Prince Harry made comments that critics are calling reckless, ungrateful, and even treasonous. He once again painted the royal family as cold, out of touch, and even racist, doubling down on claims that have already divided the public and damaged the monarchy's global image.
Exactly. It's quite astonishing when there's so many people suffering. Caroline, thank you very much. That's a royal commentator, Caroline Aston there. OK, let's see what my panel make of this one. Christo and Matthew are still with me. It is, I mean, how look, I mean, I'm trying to be down the middle on this one, but what he said about his dad, Matthew, we don't know how long he's got. Now, my dad died of cancer, and I would never have dreamt of saying that, even in private, let alone on TV. I just find it particularly incredibly self-entitled and not aware of what people are going through in the real world. I mean, he's living a luxury lifestyle in California. He's got a beautiful wife, healthy children, and it's all poor little me still.
Yes. I like Harry, right? And I know I put myself in a very unpopular camp here. And I feel for him a lot because he reminds me of me, and that might wind people up even more. Is he potentially lashing out? Yes. Are his interventions poorly timed, churlish and a little bit immature? Yes. But is that because this is a man who's gone through untold levels of bizarre trauma, being on such a public stage at a young age, losing his mum in the way he did, and then essentially being the black sheep of the family? Yeah, I think that's why. I think if we don't pay for his protection, whether he keeps the titles, I don't think it matters, because people will always know him as Prince Harry. I think that's irrelevant. If they want to take them, that's fine. You know, I don't think it'll change much automatically. But I think for him, it's a little bit harder. He's spoken previously about how he felt that Meghan had saved him. And he's undergone, you know, a lot of counselling and sort of finding himself, because he was always one that acted out. We saw him dressing up in Nazi uniform many years ago. He was playing strip poker and got caught out years ago. He was always a little bit rebellious, and probably because, I would say, if I look at my own experiences, William will have been the favourite child because he was going to be king, and he therefore didn't really have a role. And as much as it's luxury trappings and people will look and go, what a great life these people have, the levels of scrutiny and privacy you get, you know, are bizarre. And I imagine he does want a reconciliation, but it's not as easy as when I picked up the phone to my mum and dad eventually, even though I thought I was right. They have their own people. You get messages blocked. They've spoke before about how the king won't even have control over his own diary. And it wouldn't surprise me if there was people blocking him, trying to reach out, potentially.
Interesting. So you're going down the lost and lonely young man who's coping with trauma in the past. What do you make of it, Christo?
I mean, lost and lonely young man, isn't he? I think he's 40.
He's 40
now.
I mean,
he's 40.
To me, he's young. OK.
He's a duplicitous, self-centred, vile, disloyal hypocrite. He really is. I'm sorry, I loved Harry. I loved it when Meghan joined the royal family. I really did. I loved it when she first wore tights, because, you know, that's what you do when you become a royal lady. Do you remember when she first wore tights at what then Prince Charles's birthday? It was, you know, we were all so overjoyed when we paid millions for their wedding. And then what he's done since then is slowly but surely chip away at the crown and the validity of the crown and the credibility of the crown. And not only did he accuse his family of racism whilst both the Queen was suffering, the late Queen was suffering dreadfully, but also the late Prince Philip, but also now he goes on once again and gives another interview giving private information and expects to be the victim.
One royal commentator said this wasn't a cry for help, it was a targeted attack. The BBC gave him a platform and he used it to strike at his own blood. Back in London, the response has been fierce. Politicians, royal insiders and even former palace aides are calling this the last straw.
Friday was a bombshell day of royal news. First up, the freshly elected Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, formerly of this parish, of course, announced that Their Majesties King Charles and Queen Camilla will attend the state opening of Canada's Parliament. Mere hours later, though, that news was forgotten when Prince Harry's interview with the BBC was released, where he revealed that he wants reconciliation with his family, adding that he didn't know how long his father had left. Extraordinary stuff. Well, the row has rumbled on today, with the Mail on Sunday saying that the backlash continues, indeed grows. Well, the Daily Mail's Robert Hardman, author of Charles III, The Inside Story, joins me now on the sofa. Thanks indeed for being with us. Before we get on to the Harry stuff, because there is a lot to discuss there, I think it is right and proper that we talk about the invitation for the King to read the speech, to sit on the throne, to open Canada's Parliament for the first time in decades.
Yeah, it's very significant. I mean, the last time that the monarch was delivering, as they call it, the speech from the throne in the Canadian Parliament, that was the late Queen in 1977. Canada very much has always liked to do its own thing, its own way. Yes, the monarch is head of state, but it's always been the Governor-General who does this. But clearly the new Prime Minister came in and obviously one of the first things he does is speak to the Sovereign of Canada, who is the King. And so the King has been invited and he will act on the advice. This has nothing to do with the British government. Keir Starmer is out of the loop on this. It's the King of Canada being invited by the Prime Minister of Canada on behalf of the Canadian people. So it's a special moment.
Absolutely, and it does seem that perhaps the threats that Donald Trump has made towards subsuming Canada into the United States has made a sense of sort of royalism in Canada a stronger strain. I mean, I've seen reports of school children singing God Save the King now, and sort of all of these different sort of elements of difference between the Americans and the Canadians coming to the fore.
Well, it's very interesting. I mean, if you look back historically, and I when I was writing my biography of the Queen, I looked in some detail at back in the 60s. Canada was the problem realm. It was the one where there was a lot of calls for getting rid of the monarchy, particularly in Quebec. There were riots during one of her visits there. There were sort of death threats. It was all quite tense. And then suddenly you had the Watergate scandal in the US in the early 70s, and suddenly Canadians thought, hang on, this is what sort of marks us out from the US. We rather like being a realm, having a monarch, not having a president who gets into trouble. And since then, it's been a very close bond. I mean, the King loves Canada. He's been there, I think, more than to any other realm. This will be his 20th visit. It's a sort of very comfortable, understated relationship. It's just always been there. But when there are these stresses, I mean, for example, we were about to mark VE Day. I mean, when we declared war, who's right in there, right at the start, when everyone else is dithering around? It's the old realms. It's Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the sort of the oldest, strongest, toughest allies. I mean, all through the war, Canada, their losses were colossal. D-Day, who got further than anyone else on D-Day behind into German-occupied territory? Canada. So, I mean, those bonds run incredibly deep. We'll get that.
So, Strip, their titles began trending online just hours after the interview aired. Public outrage really exploded, with many saying Harry and Meghan just can't keep trashing the monarchy while they're, profiting from it.
That the King, despite his illness, has had an incredibly busy travel schedule in his first couple of years in the job. He seems to have travelled far more than any, I was about to say than any previous, of course we had for 70 years one monarch, but he does seem to be someone keen on travelling, particularly to those realms and territories.
Well, I think he probably would have gone to Canada sooner had it not been for his illness. So it's quite timely. I mean, I think the original hope was that he'd go last year, in which case he would have been there before the Canadian election and before the Trump election. So this puts it in a completely different light. But yeah, he is very conscious. He's not just king of this country, he's king of 14 other countries. I mean, there's just been an election in Australia this weekend. I mean, now there's a Republican Prime Minister there, but one along with whom the king gets on perfectly well. So we are obviously consumed with our own politics here, but there's a hell of a lot for the king. It's sort of, right, what's going on in all my other realms? It's quite a busy weekend for him.
Interesting to see that Donald Trump featured a bit in the Australian election as well. And again, the Conservative leader in Australia lost his seat, just like the Canadian Conservative leader. We must move on because Harry has been on the airwaves. Prince Harry has made several incredibly newsworthy and remarkable interventions. First of all, he's sort of putting the blame on the strain of the relationship on the king.
He says, my father won't speak to me, which, I mean, is talk about getting it slightly wrong. The reason the king doesn't speak to Harry, it's not because he won't speak to him, is he can't speak to him, because Harry is suing the king's ministers in the king's courts, and the king is what they call the fountain of justice. He's the head of the judiciary. If Harry had a conversation with him about his case, about his security, and now we know that Harry does have a tendency to immediately repeat conversations, whether in TV interviews or in books or in documentaries, that would completely undermine the case. I mean, it's what's called legal jeopardy. When you've got the king's son suing the government, he said he's now no longer going to pursue it through the courts. He's talking about an establishment stitch-up, but he's still lobbying the Home Secretary to get her on side. The king just can't go anywhere near this. I mean, this is sort of toxic territory for a constitutional monarchy who's head of the judiciary. So he can't talk to his son.
Even now that the legal side of things has wrapped up, I mean, does that open a door?
Well, it has wrapped up because he says he's writing to the Home Secretary. He wants the government to reopen.
The time in the courts has wrapped up, which would be the biggest point of
we think it has. I mean, it's it's hard to tell because, I mean, he in the earlier part of his interview, he talked about how I realise I'm not going to get anywhere through the courts. I wish someone had told me that. Well, I mean, clearly his lawyers would have told him that. He's effectively sort of thrown his lawyers under the bus saying, well, they didn't tell me I might lose. So I think, you know, we still don't really know where this is going. But quite apart from the legal angle, and that is the hard constitutional position when it comes to relations between Harry and his father, who, by the way, of course, would love a reconciliation with his son. I mean, it goes without saying. But aside from that, you've got the trust issue. And
any conversation could be a second edition of a book.
Well, not only that, but I mean, you know, is it going to be an accurate reflection of a conversation? Because I mean, Harry's book, which is an extraordinary memoir. I mean, it's a hell of a read. It's the most extraordinary royal memoir I've ever read, I think. But also within it, it's got conversations completely muddle up, events that happened that didn't happen. I mean, so there is this issue. But I think
a thrilling work of fiction. I think
if Harry could, yes. Well, I mean, to be fair to him, I mean, there's some. It's very moving. It's very powerful in parts. Harry suffered a great deal. There's no question about that. Yeah. But when you have things like where he paints this picture of how when the Queen Mother dies, he's told this sad news by a flunky, and he's alone at school, and it's all rather miserable. You think, no, you were with your father on a skiing holiday in Switzerland. I mean, it's completely wrong. So you've got. I think if he can just drop all the litigation, get through that stuff, and stop regaling the rest of us, and fascinated though we all are, obviously, with what's going on between the family, then I think you can start to rebuild some sort of bridge.
One source close to Prince William said he was, quote, absolutely livid, and added that William now supports official steps to revoke the Duke and Duchess of Sussex titles. Comment below, should King Charles step in and strip their titles immediately? Prince Harry's BBC bombshell may have just crossed the line from emotional honesty to disgraceful betrayal. If the monarchy is to survive intact, stripping the Sussexes of their titles may be the only way to protect its integrity. What do you think? Are Meghan and Harry beyond redemption, or is there still time to repair the damage? Hit like if you believe it's time to act. And subscribe for the real royal stories the mainstream media won't tell you.